Welcome back, Fright Night friends, to Scary Movie Fright Night. It is episode 2 of season 2, and today we're here to talk about a fantastical movie. Fantastic, questionable, fantastical, maybe also questionable.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, prepare to get horny because we're talking about horns.
This is Scary Movie Fright Night,
a podcast about two guys who just watch scary movies. I'm Chris, and I love scary movies.
And I'm Sam, and I hate scary movies. My body just shook, give me the heebie-jeebies. No, don't. All you have to do is stay inside in your bed, and then you won't get murdered.
Okay.
Now you have that recorded.
All right, everyone. So I hope you're buckled in for an interesting episode, or at least what I'm forecasting to be a little bit interesting. So the theme for this episode's movie was fantasy horror, which, man, this movie had some fantastical stuff in it. Horns came out in 2013, directed by Alexandre Aja, written by Keith Boonin and Joe Hill, starring Daniel Radcliffe, Juno Temple, and Max Minghella. IMDb gave it a 6.4 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes, a 40. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 42%, audience score of 49. But for those of you that maybe just decided not to watch it because you didn't want to see an amazing movie, Sam, would you like to go ahead and give us
a
I'll
give you a rundown of the synopsis so that you don't have to watch this one. Well, first of all, I have a question: is how did you find this movie?
First of all, I just want everyone to remember who picked it. Sam.
Wait, okay.
Also,
okay. I picked it because it was the only one from the list that I hadn't seen before, in my defense.
That's also true.
Yeah.
But you didn't have to. You still picked it. It's your choice. You choose your own fate. But how did I? So most of the time when I'm trying to do themes, it's usually like a Saturday morning, like breakfast is happening or something, and I usually, whether she likes it or not, I ask producer Shelley to help out as I'm trying to think through like order of themes so that they kind of that one progresses to the next one. If we have something super scary, we do something a little bit like less. So anyway, I was looking at fantastical horror because it came up, and I was looking, or fantasy horror. I was looking at a couple things, and the first two movies were easy because they were both Guillermo del Toro movies, and I needed a third one. And honestly, that's happened to me before where I'm like, I got to find a third one. I don't know why 3 is the magic number. I could probably bring 2 and to be okay. But I just started searching through lists, and this movie showed up on multiple lists of fantasy horror, we'll talk about it. We'll argue about it, but there was some fantasy to it.
There were some fantasy elements. Yeah.
And that's how I found it. And honestly, like, we'll talk about it, but go ahead and give people the rundown.
Yeah. Okay. Let's give you the rundown. Okay. So the movie centers. Okay. Spoiler alert. Was not a fan. So we're just going to start there. I'm like feeling very judgmental about this movie. That centers around the main character. His name is Ignatius Parrish. He goes by Ig. Fun fact, they only mention his full name once during the movie. Ignatius is Latin for fiery one. Okay, so Ig Parrish is the main character, and his girlfriend in the movie is Marin. Now, Marin is murdered. She's found dead in the woods, and Ig is the prime suspect of the crime. So he wakes up one morning at the beginning of the movie with a pair of horns. We literally watch them grow out of his forehead. And they just progressively grow bigger and bigger and like curl like a ram, like a goat. Like Black Phillip and The Witch. So
Black Phillip.
Like Black Phillip. So he has this pair of horns protruding from his head. And he starts interacting with people in the town. He lives in this small town in like Washington State. And whenever he starts interacting with people, they start confessing their like darkest secrets and their desires and their thoughts without him asking. They just open up and tell him everything. And then sometimes they just start acting on their impulses as well. So that's like the power of the horns. And so basically the way that the movie works is it just uses flashbacks to like explain the backstory of Ig and his friends. So we get the flashback to when he was a kid in church and he first meets this girl, Marin. She has like a cross necklace and she's using Morse code with the like flashing light at him off of the cross and using Morse code to try and communicate with him. I don't know. It's dumb. And so he has this crush on this girl. He's off. He goes off. He's playing with his kids. They're playing with cherry bombs. They're like blowing up a chicken and a watermelon, and they're blowing things up for fun. And then he does a dare to win the last cherry bomb. He's like, one of his friends is like, I'll give you this cherry bomb if you climb into the shopping cart. We'll take off all your clothes except for your underwear. Climb in the shopping cart and go down this like 100-foot ramp into the river. Stupid. So he does that. He almost dies. His friend jumps in the river and rescues him, but he wins the cherry bomb. So then the friend who rescued him from the river, his name is Lee, and Lee had taken the necklace of Marin, the little girl, in church. She had left the necklace there. It had broken. He takes it. He fixes it. And our main character, Ig, who has the crush on Marin, says, hey, Lee, I want to give that necklace that you fixed back to Marin so I can press her, connect with her. I will trade you this cherry bomb that I won for the necklace. So they exchange it. Ig goes and gives the necklace to Marin. They fall in love. They're, childhood boyfriend, girlfriend, and then they grow up and, are dating as adults. So then fast forward back to adulthood. After the crime has happened, he's got the horns. All this weird stuff is going on. People are telling him things. So then he starts doing all this like really messed up stuff. He discovers that he can communicate with snakes. Old Harry Potter has his parcel tongue abilities. And he uses them against this waitress who is plotting false information against him. He forces his brother to like overdose on drugs. One of his childhood friends who grew up to become a cop who thinks he killed his girlfriend, but he's like in the closet. He like uses his horn abilities to like get him to act on his homosexual impulses. So he just starts doing all these things to other people in the town. Not really sure what's motivating them other than the fact that he's been falsely accused of this murder. Okay, so fast forward, he ends up confronting his friend Lee, the same Lee who rescued him from the river as a kid. Lee is wearing the necklace that belonged to his girlfriend Marin when she was a child. So Ig takes off the necklace, realizes that Lee, who hadn't been able to see the horns previously, now can see the horns and becomes exposed to the power of the horns, and he ends up confessing that his friend, had raped and killed Marin. So we're like, oh my gosh, plot twist. The best friend was the one who did it. They end up getting into a fight. Ig does pretty terribly in the fight, despite having the horns and his abilities. He ends up getting his ass kicked. Lee puts him in the car, lights the car on fire, and it drives it into the river somehow. Whatever. So everyone thinks Ig's dead, and that's the end of the movie. His horns save him. He comes out of the river. He has survived. He goes to confront the father of the girlfriend, Marin's father, and he gives a note to Ig from Marin that basically said, she knew that he was going to propose to her. She had cancer. And this is where the movie started to get a little bit ridiculous for me. Sorry. And so she wanted to distance herself from him. So she lied to him about not being in love with him anymore and all this stuff. And she just wanted to like push him away. So realizing that Ig knows that his best friend raped and murdered his girlfriend and that she had been in love with him the whole time and she was only pushing away because she had cancer. So he goes to confront his friend. They have another big fight in the woods. There's this final battle. For some reason, everybody miraculously comes to the same location. So it's like Ig, his friend Lee, then his brother is there, and then their cop friend is there. Lee confesses to everybody that he did it. Then he like uses a shotgun to like kill his cop friend, like blow his head off, and laughs at it, which was a little bit over the top for me. And then, I forgot to tell you that when he puts the necklace on Ig, his horns go away. His horns had gone away. This movie was like really confusing. He puts the necklace on, the horns go away. Then at the end of the movie, he takes the necklace off, the horns come back. He sprouts these giant wings. He flies up into the air. The wings catch on fire. He falls down to the ground. Then his whole body just turns into like a fire monster. So then they have a little fight with the shotgun and the pitchfork. He ends up fatally wounding his friend Lee, and then he telepathically like sends snakes to like constrict him, and then sends a snake like in his mouth all the way in his body. And then but unfortunately Ig had also been shot a couple times and stabbed with a pitchfork, and he ends up just turning into like a fire body of ash, little volcano body, and then he dies. And then I think he is reunited with his girlfriend Marin in the afterlife. The end.
The end.
Yes.
The end.
It wasn't very speedy. It was a lot going on. And that's kind of how the movie felt.
Yeah, I mean that pretty much sums it up. It was twisty, it was turny. Sam obviously loved it.
No, I hated it.
Go watch it. And so I'm conflicted, right?
Yeah,
because I tried to find a little bit of deeper meaning in it. There were some things that I was like, okay, I see what they're doing here. The more I thought about it, I was like, okay, I feel like I have an idea of what they were trying to do. I just don't think they executed it super well.
Yeah.
I think that there's some concepts that had it been done a little bit differently could have maybe made a pretty interesting story.
Yeah.
But alas, we ended up with this one. And so I mean, yeah.
I just from the beginning, I think like the first part, like we find out that he's accused of murder, but there's this like horde of people outside of his house, reporters and stuff, following him around. And just from the beginning, I was like, I'm not buying this. And just
but that's pretty standard though. Like that's like standard movie where people think that someone murdered someone and there's a bunch of reporters outside the house. Like that's pretty...
I think just the storytelling elements just didn't work. And the interesting thing about this movie is that it is based on a book, which the book was not a shitty book. I mean, I didn't read it, but I read some reviews online, and I think it sounds like the book was not terrible. It's just the adaptation, just the choices they made. It didn't seem like it was well edited. It wasn't well written. I really feel bad for the actors because I don't think we could talk about the cast, and a lot of these people I admire and other works, but I think this movie just didn't let them shine.
Yeah. And they may have read, the screenplay and were like, oh, this is an interesting story. And like maybe it was director, like maybe it was the way that the director told the story.
Yeah.
Was the book the same name? Was it also called Horns?
Yes. So the book Horns, okay, you mentioned the people who wrote the movie. One of those writers was the same person who wrote the book. This is going to blow your mind.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Joe Hill is his how he's credited in the movie. That's his pen name. His real name is Joseph King, son of
Stephen King.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
What? That's why I picked this movie.
Yeah.
You didn't know it, but I knew that it was written by a young King. Well, I would like to know what Stephen King thinks about this movie. But no, I think you're right. Like, so first of all, the moment we see him, post murder of his girlfriend, he looks like someone that's come straight out of Azkaban. Sorry, I'm going to make Harry Potter references the whole time.
That was good.
But yeah, and I guess that's an interesting point because I do think like, he's in a small town. I definitely do think that the way when they were outdoors, the whatever, like lighting, however they used it, it definitely felt like Pacific Northwest to me, Washington State, which is interesting. But like the reporters being outside and that whole thing, that's believable. But how they executed it, again, like you said, like right off the get-go, it's just a little bit like there's something just a little bit missing.
It's like the characters weren't really developed. I just didn't care about them. Midway through the movie, I was like, I'm bored. And listen, my attention span, I can get sucked in. I will stand staring at a screen and just watch anything. I'm not super picky. Well, I don't love scary movies.
There's that time that I caught you counting the ripples on the wall because you had that textured wall in the back of your house, and you were like, I was like, Sam, what are you doing? You're just standing there looking at the wall. I made that up, but
yeah, but
for just in case everyone's wasn't sure.
But the point being, to get halfway through and be like, do I even want to finish this? Is pretty. For me, was pretty notable.
Yeah. Well, for the record, I wanted to finish it. Just because I kind of wanted to see what happened,
like what the ending was.
Yeah. Well, and just to kind of circle back real quick while you mentioned it, you talked about like the actors and that was what was so weird. So Daniel Radcliffe, we all know Daniel Radcliffe, right?
Yep.
But like Juno Temple from Ted Lasso now, she's well known now, maybe less so than by me. I wouldn't have recognized her had I watched this when this came out. But like Max Minghella, again, he's not been in a ton of movies, but he's a very pivotal Handmaid's Tale character.
Yeah. And
right?
And I think he's great in Handmaid's Tale. Like,
he is
very
great. Oh
compelling.
yeah,
Like, I think he does an amazing job in that character as Nick. Is that
he
his
was
name?
actually Nick. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's actually great in this movie until the part where he takes the necklace off, and then it's that weird. He's not being himself because it's all no like all his compulsions are like
Yeah.
but his normal like I'm a friend, I'm a lawyer. Like again, it's not a complex character, but I thought he was fine up until that point. Iggy's dad, James Remar, he's been in a whole bunch of stuff, but we mentioned Dexter. A while back, he played Dexter's dad. He was the cop that taught Dexter
Okay.
Morgan, and he was like he always was there like a spirit for him. So but he's been in a ton of stuff. Not to go down the list. Even Marin's dad, David Morse, he's been in all sorts of random stuff. Not maybe the most household name where you can exactly like I couldn't think of what he'd been in, but I immediately recognized him. He was in
Mm.
Contact. He was in World War Z. Like he has a
Mm.
long list of movies he's been
I
in.
didn't
Heather
recognize her.
Graham. I haven't seen Heather Graham in
Heather
forever, but she
Graham.
was in this movie.
Yeah.
Like randomly, she's this waitress.
Yeah.
Like
What
it was so random.
Was she in Austin Powers? What was she in?
She was in the second Austin Powers movie.
Okay.
She was also in, like Boogie Nights. She was in all sorts of like, silly comedies back in the day. Those two are the two that I can think of right now. But she used to be in a ton of stuff. Less so, I think, in the recent years. But yeah. So we had such a random array of actors, most of which we recognized from somewhere, like thrown into this role where maybe their characters were just a little bit less developed.
It's hard to explain why it wasn't good. I mean,
yeah.
There's definitely like, I think it had a lack of character development. I think it was almost like it didn't know what it wanted to be. The fact that we were like,
that's true.
is it a horror movie? Is it a fantasy movie? It had some comedy, kind of, but it wasn't really that funny.
Yeah.
I wasn't really scared. Like, and then the mix mash, like the mix. I see. I don't even have a good word for this. The mishmash of like, there was like rock music, which I think was a nod to like the devil's music, But then there was like other moments where there was like scored film music,
Right.
At the end.
Right.
It just didn't.
Well, and then
work.
And then he had his like fantasy memories of him and Marin, and a lot of it felt kind of fantasy. And I can't really describe what I mean by that because it's been a long time since I've seen like a fantasy movie. But I'm like thinking back to like The Secret Garden, which came out 500 years ago. But like something about the feel of it kind of felt fantasy. Like they tried to capture some sort of feel for at least the first part. It turned real dark real quick at a certain point, like you said, right? All of a sudden he puts the snakes on Heather Graham, and I'm like, is this guy turning into the devil?
Right.
And then he makes his brother OD. Now, granted, his brother was letting him, kind of leaving it out to dry because his brother like knew that, he thought he might have killed her because he didn't remember what like. So there's like some, but it didn't. And I'm gonna get on a diatribe here, but the level of aggression towards his brother like was so crazy that he would put him through that. But then he finds out that Lee not just murdered, but also raped the love of his life. And like, where's the intensity? Where's the rage? Where's the and he didn't just find out, he saw it. He touched him. He saw it all happen. And like the rage wasn't there. And then even after he survived the car crash, he comes back and he greets Lee, and of course, and I don't think you mentioned this, right? But everyone forgets the things that happen when they're in his presence. So then like he's able to just be like, "Hey Lee, let's go for a walk."
Yes,
I don't despise you.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to rip your head off for the pain you caused like this woman, right? It was so
and
weird.
Like, maybe that was an intentional choice of like, oh, we're trying to make it sinister, like he's acting like he doesn't have these bad intentions, so he's like, let's just go for a walk. But it just didn't come across. That whole scene, I was like, this is just stupid. It's just stupid.
Or maybe and this is and this is where all kind of tied into what I think they were going for, right? I think that they were going for, right, he like this woman was everything to him, right? They kind of at least captured that a little bit. Like she was his, like soulmate, whatever. She is murdered. No one knows who does it. She went to church every day. Like she was faithful, and like what, and so there's some rage against God in there. And like somewhere in there, I think they were trying to say he had to embrace the dark side. This isn't Star Wars, but he had to embrace something else like vengeance, right? Like the vengeance and the darkness, he had to embrace it to like move forward. And I think that that's when the devilish part's coming out, because he's embracing the vengeance and the revenge and the seeking of revenge. Now, again, that's not really acted out well, but the reason I'm kind of getting to that is, so then the further he gets down this dark pathway of vengeance and revenge, right? Then he starts doing these sinister things. Then when he puts the necklace on, that vengeance and revenge is kind of protected. So he sees Lee, he's able to be clear-headed. They go out, they do the thing. But unfortunately, he's like, I'm gonna lose this battle. So he takes the necklace off and he comes back full vengeance and revenge mode, kills Lee. And honestly, he could have destroyed him way better than that. Like, if you're gonna destroy this guy, like, he just blew this guy's head off. Anyway. We know how he died. You described it.
Yeah.
And then at the end, and then on top of all that, I don't know where the angel wings came from, but whatever, cool.
Yeah.
And then he dies. He embraced evil and the devil, the serpents around him, speaking parcel tongue. That didn't really happen, but in my mind it did. And then he embraced the evil. And if we're going off of religion and angels and devils and like fallen angels or the devil, and then somehow they're reunited in the afterlife, and I'm like, but is like heaven, hell not a thing? Because I'm pretty sure she went to heaven. I'm pretty sure this dude embraced being a devil. So anyway,
yeah,
but I think that's what they were trying to capture. Is I think they were trying to capture him embracing vengeance and revenge, and that being the physical representation of that. But this is me making it up, and this is me thinking of how they could have done it. That's just not how it executed.
I just didn't get the point of the movie. Even if the thing was like, okay, he's embracing this dark side, the dark magic, he's becoming a Death Eater.
Yeah.
It just didn't. I was like, so what? Now contrast that with a movie that we did in season 1 by his father wrote, Carrie, where this was a character that she also kind of, it was like you're conflicted. You're like, is she the hero? Is she the villain? She did bad things to other people. However, there was so much more character development before she turned. Where I felt much more connected to her as a character. I felt bad for her. I like there, there was all the buildup of, the bullying that she was experiencing and all these events. Now for him, obviously this is a terrible situation to like wake up, have no idea what happened to your girlfriend, and everybody is just blindly accusing you of killing her.
Right.
But we didn't really experience. We like barely experienced that. There was that run in like with the father and obviously all the reporters outside of his house, but like we didn't like those moments weren't like palpable.
You didn't even see her lying there the way they found her, very creepily, honestly. When she was super pale with the big bludgeon to the head, right?
Yeah.
We don't even see that till like halfway through the movie. But I think you're right. And I think you said, so what? And I think that the difference is I think any movie with this same storyline with the protagonist going down this journey, like, I think that the story as a whole was a fine story if they had tweaked it and made us, and what you said, right, is like, but they didn't make us really care about Iggy, right?
Yeah.
Like, we didn't care about him enough to where we were like, yeah, man, figure out what happened. Oh, damn, he's doing some dark shit because like he's given in to the vengeance and the revenge.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. See, that it didn't
really
feel
care
satisfying. When Carrie starts doing all these things to everybody, you're like, yeah, screw you. Like, you bullied her. Like, I'm glad you're getting electrocuted and lit on fire. Your car is getting flipped over, which is terrible. I don't really embrace that violence against other people. But then in this movie, he's like doing this stuff. He's like setting the snakes against the waitress, and it
was weird,
making his brother overdose. And I'm like, why are you doing that? I don't have any satisfaction over these events. This doesn't feel good at all.
Well, and again, like, if he is a compelling character in a different movie, like maybe he's doing stuff that makes us feel uncomfortable, and we're like, man, I was cheering for this guy, but I don't like this path he's on, right? Like, maybe he does stuff where he's questioning if he's good or bad, and so sometimes he goes down. But again, the baseline's not there where we're really following him and we're like cheering for him to be good, and he's going bad and he's going good, right? Like, and then it just didn't mesh. And then on top of all that, and this, I mean, ties right in, but like Lee's character. Maybe I just feel like this for this subject matter, but we mentioned that he raped and killed Marin. And I think I actually said this about the sexual assault in High Life, but it just felt unnecessary.
It felt unnecessary.
Right? Like, I think that it's a cop-out way for the audience to really want him to die, right? Like, okay, he murdered her, but also he caused this other distress, and then and so it's a way.
Mm,
I feel like if you want to make a compelling character that maybe is deep and dark and like he
mm-hmm,
killed her, you could still honestly, I think it's more compelling if everything happened the same, and in the moment he's this whole time thought she was in love with him,
mm-hmm,
and it found out she wasn't, and then he's struggling over it, he loses it a little bit, maybe he doesn't even hit her with a rock, but she dies, maybe it's even an accident, but Iggy is so on the path of vengeance and revenge that he ends up killing him anyway, right? Like, so now there's conflict, like does he deserve to die? I don't know, he did kill her, he didn't, but he didn't, but it was an accident, but Iggy, like, he's on the path, and maybe there's a struggle at the end, but I just feel like it was a cop out. It was a way for
cop
us
out.
to be
Yeah.
like, well now we definitely want him to die, and also it allowed them to take him to that weird side. Well, like you said, he laughed. They blew the cop's head off, and that was pretty graphic. It literally like showed the head blowing off, and he laughs, and it's just like no shock factor. It was
Yes. So this is okay. So this
yeah
is an interesting question to me. When when that scene happened, when he shoots the head
yeah
off and he laughs,
mhm.
literally rolled my eyes. I was like, seriously, this was so dumb. Like, I didn't get anything out of the head being blown off or the whole interaction. I
yeah
was like, this is lame. But
yeah
contrast that with like many of the other movies that we've watched have
mhm.
gory elements or graphic elements or like wild, crazy
Right.
things that are happening. But in some of the other storytelling, it's like, it's not, how do I put this? It's not that I enjoy seeing the gore. It's not that I want
Right.
to see the violence, but the way that the story is told makes it compelling. Or like, think
Right.
about Midsommar, right? We see the guy with his like lungs flayed out. We see the whole
Mhm.
burning the bear situation. We see
Yep.
just some like gross violent stuff. We see the scene in the beginning where she inhaled the
Yep.
carbon monoxide. What are some other of the gory things that we've seen in other movies?
I mean, even Cabin in the Woods in the end, like the blood everywhere,
Yeah,
and we've talked about like,
all of Evil
people
Dead
getting
Rise.
impaled, all of
Yes.
Evil Dead Rise, make it
Yes.
unrated, right? Yeah.
So why is
Yeah.
it that in those movies it's like it's like, oh, that was fun, or that was funny, or like, oh, I can't believe
Yeah.
that happened, or like that was really dark, but it was part of the story, and so I embrace it. What is
Yeah.
the difference between that and watching this movie where I'm like, that was so fucking stupid? Why did they just do that?
I think it ties back to what you said about they didn't know what they wanted it to be. Because I think that we haven't watched a movie yet, but I'm sure there's movies out there where it's just unnecessarily like gory, but like for the record, that head blow off was just like ridiculous gory.
Yeah,
It almost didn't, it's not like, and so like
you take it out and the movie doesn't change.
if the whole movie had been over the top with like heads blowing up and like the boys, right? Like when she said they start exploding heads,
Yeah,
when that's part of what the movie is, and you
yeah,
accept, oh, this movie's just going to be over the top with exploding limbs and
right,
heads and feet and toes and
right.
nose. But then it just seems so like toes and nose. It seemed just so out of left field.
Yes,
All of a sudden we make it to the end. The cop,
yeah.
again, I don't know. And
That's
then
the
all of a sudden,
perfect
like
explanation.
they threw it in, and it was like, what? Why is
Yes.
he even there?
Yes, it's like they were writing it, and maybe this is all. I mean, I read the book. This pretty closely ties to the book. Maybe it reads better
okay,
in the book, but it watches like they were putting it all together, and they were like, "What can we do next? Oh, let's give him wings." Like,
yeah,
what is that
angel
for?
wings. He's a fallen angel because he
Yes,
floated up and fell back
yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah. Oh, he has to be a fallen angel. Oh, let's say she had cancer and she actually did want to be with him, but she had to lie about it. Like, that
But
could be a very compelling storyline
true,
if told correctly. Like, the
but
premise.
they actually I thought that part wasn't horrible because at least the backstory was that her father had watched her mother die of cancer.
Sure.
And so she then was like, the only way I'm going to protect him from going through the same thing is if I make him think that I want to break up with him. So
Yeah.
that part is believable, but it's in the
It's
middle of everything
believable. Yeah,
else.
they just didn't lay the groundwork. Like, you
Yeah.
can have a plot twist that's like unexpected, but when they
Yeah.
said that, I was like, great, I don't really care because I wasn't really that invested in them in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was invested in her because, she was the only character that seemed to be nice to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably because we didn't see
We
her.
just again like
mostly she was just dead. But
we didn't see. Well, I guess there were some scenes where we see them interacting and
them together,
Yeah. I guess I just
yeah.
wasn't
And those
into
scenes
that.
felt kind of normal. Those weren't the worst scenes of the movie, right? When
Yeah.
they were like when he's doing flashbacks and they're trying to build the level of connection they had, right? Like
Yeah.
honestly, that wasn't the worst part of the movie. The worst part was kind of the executing of everything in the present.
Do you want to hear some
Um,
really bad reviews of the movie?
no thanks.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So this is and okay, we're both fans of Beach Too Sandy, Water Too Wet. So this is a little bit of a
Mhm.
nod to that podcast. Their
Okay.
entire podcast is just reading bad reviews of any and everything, and it's so funny, it's so entertaining.
Right.
So I was like, I'm gonna look for some bad reviews of this movie. We did the same thing for
Nice.
High Life, which also is not
Yeah.
one of our favorites.
Which I would recommend this one over High Life. Although if you want to
Really?
think about it, so I don't know. It depends, right? Watch High Life if you want a little bit more of in-depth thought.
Yeah.
But if you want to feel depressed, watch High Life, right? Anyway, so
If you want to feel depressed.
yeah.
Okay, so I
You
would
were
read
like,
some
wasn't one of those reviews? It was like
I'd rather jump into a
deeper,
black hole.
darker High Life. Or
Oh
something.
yeah, lower, High Life. Yeah.
High Life. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so this person wrote, such a cliche story. This is a 1-star review. Such a cliche story. I figured out the murderer way too soon. Lousy writing, no logic. Wish I could rate it 0.
Also, I knew it was Lee early on as well.
You did too? I didn't.
Yeah.
I honestly
I couldn't figure out. I never figured out about how he didn't know about the horns. Like I thought it was weird.
Yeah.
But early on, I was like,
why? What tipped you off?
I don't really know. Probably because he's the only one. They hid him away. Because Iggy's going around to every character who's like telling the truth, but somehow it doesn't magically work on one person because he's too nice. Get out of here. I was like, there's something going on, and I think he is the guy. Now, again, the necklace thing, I didn't catch that because they didn't show you the necklace. But
yeah,
but they didn't put him in plain sight and then have you be like, oh, and then have you check him off the list. He never got checked off the list. So as everyone else was going through, and I'm like, well, there's only one person at this point. If we're going everyone we've already known, then he was the only one left.
Nice.
But anyway,
you have a good villain radar. Your
do.
Vildar is on point.
I do. Producer Shelley just commented that Chris just does that. It's not cute when you watch things with him because I really want to be like, oh, I know how this is gonna go down.
Yeah.
I'm a very big planner. Like I for better or worse, I would say worse when I'm trying to shut my brain off, right? But I think I'm like Doctor Strange in Avengers Infinity War. I'm looking at all the possibilities. And so like when I watch a movie, I just kind of naturally I look at it and I'm like, oh, I think this is actually what's going on and this is whatever. I am not allowed to say that out loud because if I'm watching a movie with someone, they might stab me.
I'm learning this. This is something new. I didn't realize how so in the moment, do you have a hard time just like being in the moment of the movie?
No, it's just kind of working on in the background. Or not. No, it's not really in the background. It's usually, and it depends on the movie, right? If it's super complex, I'm not like trying to figure it out, pausing it and getting my pen and paper and doing math equations. That doesn't really make any sense. But yeah, it's something going on while I'm watching, but I can be fully into the movie, but then I just kind of put together the pieces.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's just like I knew you were gonna talk about reviews about the movie.
You did?
No,
am I that predictable? Kidding. Oh, okay.
No.
Well, here's another review. They get better and better. So this person gave it 2 stars actually, and they said bad. 2 stars for anxiety. Parentheses would have been 1 otherwise, but the entire plot, movie, and everything involved. ... Meh. Sorry, Daniel.
That's funny.
And
also, I appreciate that they were like, it gave me anxiety, so I went for a scary movie. So I'll give it an extra. Yeah, because they were like, I wanted to like feel on edge because I wanted to see a horror movie. So at least it made me feel a little on edge, even if I didn't like it.
Yeah, I feel like I would have chosen a different word other than anxiety. Like, no, thank you. I don't want anxiety. I'd rather have tenseness. What's a better word? I don't know. Something other than anxiety. Tension. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you get scared at all during the movie?
No.
Yeah, I didn't either.
No. That's not scary.
I don't know that I was ever anxious. I was just like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
This review doesn't really make sense, but I'm gonna read it because it's funny.
Okay.
This person, Wendy, gave it 2 stars and she said,
Okay.
very disappointing. Very disappointing. Roast,
So disappointing.
were overcooked parsnip, was rock hard, haven't been for a while. I see why, waste of money.
Wait. Roast,
Yeah, you want me to read it again?
parsnip was rock. Well, yeah, one more time.
Very disappointing. Roast, were overcooked parsnip, was rock hard, haven't been for a while. I see why, waste of money. There's no punctuation.
Okay,
So
that is a troll and computer generated. There's no way someone typed that.
maybe
they
she
did.
started typing a review and then got distracted. Maybe she was doing text to speech and was talking to somebody.
Yeah.
So roast, don't overcook the parsnips.
Yeah, and then press send on accident. Yeah, that's probably true. Roast, very disappointing.
This one I think echoes what we were saying earlier. This is a 1.5-star review. An insufferably disjointed and overlong film that has serious trouble defining the rules of its universe and suffers from a messy structure, expository narration, and intrusive flashbacks.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. And then this other person, 1 star, said a whole new level of stupid.
That's what your face said when you came in. About the movie, I mean. About the movie.
Yes, that is definitely.
Yeah.
I was like, well,
that was the impression I got from you as you were.
Let's see, 2 more. This one, another. Oh, they didn't even give it 1 star. They gave it a 0.5 star.
Ooh, that's impressive. I didn't know you could do that.
As painful to watch as growing horns.
Oh, okay. I mean, it did look pretty painful to grow the horns. Yeah.
And then, this one's a little long, so I'll skip some of it. This is a 1-star review. They didn't even name themselves. They wrote this anonymously. They were like, this is so harsh, I'm not even going to put my name to it. The screenwriter sloppily tackles subjects like love, drug abuse, cancer, rape, crime, criminal investigation, death, grief, women, homosexuality, with all the competency of someone who's maybe thought about each of these things once, but experienced none of them.
That's actually probably accurate. Yeah.
Absolutely juvenile take on everything. A mean-spirited exercise in stale genre cliches and forced melodrama. Horns feels like it was written by someone's emotionally stunted, misogynistic, F-bomb obsessed, incel teenaged boy for his film school application, and directed by a callous hack with no finesse for filmmaking. Skip it.
That's fair. I mean, that was a lot of words, but I do think that kind of, I mean, honestly, I think the best part of that review was the discussion of so many different topics, but none of it felt real.
Yes,
none of it felt like, like this is how you approach the topic. This is how you approach the situation. Like uncreatively.
Yes,
right. Like using it just to throw another thing.
Yes. Cancer, drugs. When the kids were throwing around like homophobic slurs, I was like, ugh, this is really like I didn't love that. But then later we find out that one of those kids, like I think the kid who was using
the one that was throwing the slurs,
grew up to be gay. So like that was the whole point. I think that was the thing they were trying to play with. But like it was crammed in there with all the other things, and it just didn't.
Yeah,
it didn't work.
It was it's like everything else, right? Like it was unnecessary, right? Sure. In this small random ass town, like could that have actually been how things went down? And he turned out to be like this guy that was too macho to what? Sure, maybe. Yeah. But like, what did that have to do with the storyline?
Yeah.
Was it compelling?
Yeah.
Was it 100% unnecessary? Yeah.
Yes. So all these like negative reviews and my experience watching it and thinking like I don't love this movie made me think, who are the people who made this? I felt kind of bad for the actors, and I didn't want to come in here and like shit on the actor's performance because you already talked about like and I forgot the name, Juno Temple from Ted Lasso. Love that show, and I forgot the name of the guy who was in Handmaid's Tale. You've already pointed out, and I love them in all these other performances, and of course Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter.
Right.
So I was like, okay, the actors are doing the best they can. Who directed this thing? And I wanted to.
Who led them down this path?
Who led them down? Who can we blame?
Said, no,
I don't want to blame.
This.
But I was like, I wanted to understand the person who created this movie. So I did a little bit of reading about the director. His name is Alexandre Aja. He's a French director, and and not trying to shit on him either, but there was some fun facts about him that I thought we could bring into the
Lots of talking
discussion.
about shitting on people today.
I
Anyway, go ahead.
know it's hard because like I didn't love the work, I didn't love the movie,
Yeah.
and well, I just think about anytime you
But that doesn't
consume
mean, that we need to put feces on people, you know. I'm sorry, go ahead.
or send snakes their way or stab them with
Yeah.
pitchforks. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm struggling because I know what it feels like to create something and put it out into the world, and then for people to be like, I mean, I don't know what this feels like for people to be like, "Wow, that was garbage that you just created."
Yeah, I was like, where are you going with this, Sam?
Okay, but let's talk about the director. So
Mhm,
Alexandre Aja, French director. His I think
mhm.
second major film, one of his early films, was called Haute Tension. Tension. Wow, my French is really rough. It's high tension in
Pretty
English.
okay, got it.
Okay,
Ooh,
so that was a horror movie, and
close to High Life.
oh yes, which wasn't High Life also? Was that a French director, or was a French
Ooh,
actress in it?
I don't know.
I forgot. We'll connect the dots later. So anyway,
Yeah,
this movie, Haute Tension, um, puts him on the map of the horror movie genre. It was a French slasher, and it was seen by none other than our director friend Wes Craven.
okay.
And Wes invited him to come up with a movie remake. I guess Wes had directed a movie in the '70s called The Hills Have Eyes.
Yep, yep,
So
and they
uh,
remade it years and years later, yeah.
this director, Alexandra, directed the remake of The Hills Have Eyes.
Okay. Oh,
Which have you seen it?
it's been a long time. I honestly don't remember if it was any good, but I think I've seen it, yeah.
I don't know if I've seen it or not, but
Came out in, like, the 90s or something, I
it
think?
was a big it was a big one, right? It was a big win. Like people liked them.
I think so. Like, I remember it, right? So, yeah, it couldn't have been bad, I don't think.
I mean, I'm sure it didn't bomb. I mean,
Yeah, I
I feel
think
like I
it
remember
looks
people
like
talking about it, so it must have been like decent. People went to see it.
yeah, it looks like it came out in 2006 and they made a sequel the next year, which is a quick turnaround for a sequel, but,
Hmm.
yeah, so I mean but I do remember it. I do
Yeah,
remember it. So I if it were forgettable, then I would have forgotten it.
well, this is true. So after he did The Hills Have Eyes, he produced a remake of the movie Maniac, a 1980 horror slasher.
Maniac,
Maniac
okay.
starred Elijah Wood. So in this movie, he
Weird.
got Harry Potter. In that movie, he got Frodo.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, just a little fantasy to fantasy connection there. Um, he is a member of a group of directors known as the Splat Pack. Um,
The what?
splat, like splat, like
Okay.
uh, this is so the term Splat Pack, coined by film historian Alan Jones in Total Film magazine, a group of new wave of directors making brutally violent horror films. This is all from Wikipedia, by the way. So the
Okay.
other Splat Pack members, you will probably recognize some of these names, at least one of these names, because you taught me about this person.
Mhm.
Darren Lynn Boosman, Neil Marshall, Greg McLean, Eli Roth, James Wan, Lee Whannell, and Rob Zombie.
And Rob Zombie. Okay. And Eli Roth is pretty well known as well.
Okay,
He did, like,
nice.
the, Hostel movies. Hostel movies. That was Eli Roth.
Ah,
Yeah.
great. Okay. So, director of this movie was part of that group of like the new wave of directors who were
Hmm,
the new generation of like horror movie directors.
interesting.
And those are all the fun facts that I have about Alexandra.
So the last thing that I wanna say, is that I don't know why he's not good at his job if, he was around all those great directors. I'm just kidding. You know what? Sometimes you try, sometimes you don't do great. Like, hey, if 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 you don't fail, you're not trying, they say sometimes
There
or
you
something people
go.
say.
Smooth seas
But
never made skilled sailors.
oh, interesting. Smooth saws never made cuts in wood. I made that up.
Well,
No, but I just wanted to say because there was lots of negative, like you said it, but like not no hate on the actors. We love
yeah.
Daniel Radcliffe. I actually came across an article that said he only did this movie because he was under the Imperious curse at the time. And so that's why
Oh.
he was in such a bad movie, is because they had control. Damn Voldemort,
Well,
man.
it seemed like the character was under the Imperious curse because I mean, he couldn't control the horns. He couldn't control
Yeah.
the way people were interacting with him. He's just trying to
There's
get
some
through
cruciatus
life.
in there. He was like
Yeah.
tweaking. There's a lot. There was a lot. How many other I like literally like he should have spared Yamas. Anyway, we're done
Did
with
you
Harry Potter curses from memory.
did you notice there was a lot of like Garden of Eden references? Like the name of the diner was Eve
Oh,
or
I
Eves or
did not
something like
catch
that,
that.
and it had an
Interesting.
apple on the sign.
Okay, of course, of course. I'm actually kind of surprised I didn't catch that because it seems pretty obvious.
Yeah, and of course the snakes and the pitchfork and the
Yeah,
fire. There was a lot of like little
yeah,
things that were like biblical
yeah.
references, I think.
That makes sense.
His license plate on the car was like a Bible verse.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, I read it somewhere and then I forgot to take note of what it was. I don't
That's
remember what the
fair.
verse was, but yeah, little things like
Just some
that. There
Bible
was all
verse
these like little biblical references or
references.
symbols here and there.
Man, I feel like I do firmly believe that the story could have been pretty good. They just done a better job,
Just
which is
needed
probably
some
everything,
editing.
right?
Yeah.
Like, just needed some editing, some reshoots, maybe a different director, maybe a different different script. But anyway, that's all I got. Is
Maybe
that
a
all you
different
got?
cast, maybe a different score, maybe a different
Yeah,
set. Just kidding.
maybe a different everything.
Yeah.
So before we talk about the next movie,
Yeah.
because I'm excited to do something a little different, we already said, was it scary? Nah,
No.
not
Can we give it a
really.
0?
Can we?
I don't know. I don't know the rules
Maybe.
of the scary scale.
I mean, it's your scale.
That's true.
Would
I
you
guess we could
really? Would you give it a 0? I guess 0 is like non-existent.
So when I think about rating something on how scary it is, I think of like how like literally how I mean, obviously how scared I was, but like what does that mean? So
Yeah,
how did my body react? Was there times where I like jumped because I got jump scared, or was I like tense, like, oh my god, I'm so nervous about what is going to happen? Or
yeah.
was it a psychological, like, oh, this is really messing with my mind, it's really making me think about things and challenge my
Yeah.
view of the world? None of those things happened for this. Literally
Okay.
nothing. Felt no
So it's a
feelings.
0.
No quivers in my loin, like
Yeah.
nothing. Even the
Nothing.
cop
It's
hookup
like,
scene, I was like, not that hot. Oh, come on.
yeah, I know. Like that didn't even get your heart going. Like,
No.
right? Like,
Yeah. Wasn't sexy
yeah.
enough. Just
Also like bulletproof vests and all sorts of like equipment in their car. That Howard, come on, at least
yeah.
get in the back seat.
They like we said in that review earlier, it was told from the point of view of someone who has never experienced this.
Right. And I made out with plenty of cops to understand that it's not
That it
feasible to do it in
just
the front seat.
not in the front seat, not with your
Not in the
bulletproof
front
vest
seat.
on. Yep.
No, it's just not feasible.
Yeah.
Okay, so we gave it a 0. We're saying it's not scary. I already know you're not recommending it. Man, I'm trying to think like when I would ever say watch this movie, and it's pretty hard. I think in 55 years, we'll give him longer than that. In 67 years, when Daniel Radcliffe passes away and we look back on his legacy, watch every movie but this one because I don't want to tarnish his legacy. I was gonna say do a full watch of all his movies, but I changed my mind mid-sentence. But yeah.
Well, I'll say this. Just this is my final word on Horns. I didn't like it, but I'm glad that we watched it. Because that
Agreed.
is the only
Agreed.
way to like you understand what you love about good movies when you watch bad movies. You know, like I
That's
think
true.
part of
That's
this journey that we're on of exploring the genre is going to involve some swings and some misses, and I'm still
Mhm.
glad that we watched it.
Yeah. The best part, and for the listeners who watched this movie before listening to the episode, leave us a rating, leave us a review. Let us know what you thought. Let us know if you made it through the movie. Did you hate it? If you loved it, we definitely want to know. Like, if you didn't make it through it, let us know that too. This would be a really interesting one to get some feedback from other people that actually took the time to watch it. So let us know. But with that said, shall we talk about the next episode?
Now, I think we have something special planned for the next one, don't we?
Hey, if you're enjoying Scary Movie Fright Night, hit pause real quick, rate, review, follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And now, back to the episode. So, first and foremost, we're going to do a double feature. I'll explain what that means in a minute. But also, there are some sequels coming out that are like sequels to movies that are definitely on our list. And so we would be a miss if we didn't take the opportunity to capitalize on it and incorporate it into the seasons. So what we're doing this next episode is we're going back to 1973 and we're going to watch the original Exorcist movie.
Ooh.
The movie that scared the crap out of my mom when she was growing up, and then scared the crap out of me when I was growing up. And then the week after that, we're going to go in theaters just after it came out in theaters and watch Exorcist Believer, which is a direct sequel to The Exorcist. And then now, of course, that's at the time of recording this. By the time this gets to you, you should be able to stream it and join us in for all the fun. And so I haven't given Sam a chance to react yet. I have a little more to say about it, but Sam, aren't you excited? Like The Exorcist, like who isn't excited to watch that?
Well, I was just laughing at the way that you just said that it scared your mother when she was growing up, and then it scared you when you were growing up, and then a week later. And I thought you meant a week later after you grew up.
Oh, yeah. And then a week later,
I finished growing up, and here I am.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
No, I am excited about it. Like, so in doing preparing for these episodes and like researching about some of these, movies online, and who directed the original Exorcist?
So it was directed by a man named William Friedkin.
Oh no, I haven't read about him. Okay,
Yeah.
well,
and he was written by another William. It was written by William Peter Blatty, and we'll talk about. There was a conflict between them. I'll talk about a little bit, but go ahead.
I think when we did our Halloween episode on Halloween about the movie Halloween, I want to say, and this was a long time ago, so this might be a mismemory, not true memory, but I think I read that movie had elements that were inspired from The Exorcist. The point that I'm trying to make is, I've done a lot of reading about movies and directors and the genre and trying to learn about it. And obviously, I read about The Exorcist pops up all the time. It's referenced, it's on lists. It's like, so this feels like one of those like must-see iconic scary movies. It's like, I feel like this is a rite of passage into the world of scary movies.
Yep, 100% agree. Like, it's literally one that's been on my list since day one. You see it on every list. Scariest movies of all time. And this movie that came out in 1973 is on almost all of those lists. Now we'll see how it holds up. Well, it's a standard. Let's test Sam and see coming in fresh what he thinks. But again, so the movie came out in 1973. It stars Linda Blair, who everyone knows from The Exorcist. Max von Sydow was in it. Ellen Burstyn played her mother, and she's reprising her role in the movie that's coming out. And so it's iconic horror movie. It's going to be great. So also a piece of clarity. So there's the original theatrical version. Then there's a version that Then there's a version that released in 2000 dubbed the extended director's cut, version you've never seen. That released in 2000, where they added back 11 minutes of footage that didn't make it in the theatrical release.
Okay.
My mom will tell you that one is the worst one because there's parts about it that maybe she had read about in the book, I guess. And I'm not going to talk about what those parts are that creeped her out and they gave her nightmares. And that wasn't in the theatrical version, but they incorporated it into this version.
When you say worst, do you mean worst like it was a bad experience, or worse like it was the scariest? Oh, okay.
Like the one we need to watch, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so I did a little research back and forth. Some people say theatricals is the original version. Some people honestly say, well, the director cut out those scenes, so the director's cut is the original version. But I actually found an article where they quoted the director, and at the time they the writer and the director kind of argued a little bit over the scenes. But it seems like all these years later, the director said the truest version is the extended cut that came out in 2000. So if I'm going off what the director told me, that's the one we're going to watch. Either way, it's going to be.
Have you seen both of them?
Sure, but I don't even know the last time I've seen either of them.
Okay. Do you know which parts not my adult were the parts that were cut?
We'll have to do a little bit of trivia because I know at least one. I know the one that I remember my mom talking about, freaking her out because she must have read the book. That's the only thing I can think, right? That they incorporated. I know that scene, and we can talk about it when we record the episode.
Okay.
But the other pieces, we'll have to look into it a little bit and just kind of see like what was added.
Okay. I'd rather watch the longer one anyway and see more, and then talk about these were the parts that were cut from the original, rather than watch the original and then have to imagine, like, talk about what was cut but not actually get to see. I'd rather just see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the just honestly to all the discussion because, I mean, the reaction people had in theaters, like just like how the 1973 public took this movie.
Hmm.
There's some, it's pretty crazy. It took the world by storm.
Wow.
But for tradition's sake, I wouldn't want you to miss out. So I'm gonna go ahead and read you the
Oh, of
synopsis
course. Yes.
of The Exorcist.
Perfect.
Yeah. In the heart of Georgetown, Washington, D.C., a seemingly ordinary family is thrust into a harrowing ordeal when their young daughter, Reagan, begins to exhibit increasingly disturbing and inexplicable behavior. Doctors and specialists are baffled by her condition, and her mother, Chris, is desperate for answers. As Reagan's condition worsens, her mother turns to Father Damien Karras, a skeptical priest struggling with his own faith. Together, they confront a malevolent force that defies all reason and threatens not only Reagan's life, but also Karras' own faith. And that's The Exorcist.
Nice. Okay, so it's a little bit of, religious questioning.
Yeah, I think that if we were to categorize this into a theme, it would fall
Mhm.
under paranormal horror for sure, right?
Okay.
Although, yeah, because it's like very religious paranormal horror, but it's demon. It's very similar to Conjuring because it has to do with possession, right? So, but without the jump scares.
I think what I'm going to be watching for is because this is something that came out in the 70s. I'm always so interested when we
Mhm.
go back and watch movies from the 70s or 80s. Is like, does is the thing that was so scary at that point in time, like for that generation, still scary today, or are we numb to
Right,
it because of other ways in which the genre has evolved? And I could see it going
right.
either way. There could be elements that are still just as scary, but maybe that's what I'm going to be watching for.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely recommend for this one, do a little self scare. Try to watch this one in the dark. Um, I I would recommend if you're trying to feel, if you're trying to embrace the 1973, this is the oldest movie we watched. Try to not let old film campiness get to you,
Hmm.
and just and try to see how you feel. I'm a little curious. Again, I'm like decades removed from the last time I've seen it, so I'll be curious as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think part of it is seeing yourself in the characters. And when you're just that far removed from the time period, you're seeing like different
yeah,
technology. They maybe are speaking a different way. Just the culture's so different. It's like,
hmm
that's not me. I don't feel
that's
like
true.
I'm in the same. Although, that's not to say that you can't identify with characters in like the totally different time periods or genres or different worlds. So
Yep.
maybe that argument doesn't really hold up. We'll see. We'll see how it is
Yeah,
after watching the
it'll be
movie.
interesting.
Yeah,
It's worth noting, right, that Reagan is a little girl. She's a kid,
the one who gets
and so
possessed.
yeah, and so some of it, I'm gonna warn you, like some of it's kind of shocking. It's a little shocking,
Ooh.
and it was definitely, and we'll talk about this. But what was that like in 1973? People watching,
Yeah.
just kind of like the way they did this. Again, I'm not
Mhm.
going to give too much away, but then it's going to be super interesting to then watch something that is legitimately 50 years later and it's a direct sequel. It's gonna be wild. It's gonna be good.
Well, and
I hope
I
I hope
struggle with children. When children are in danger,
it's true.
I
It's
don't
true.
love that.
That's true. I mean, most people do.
Most
Weirdo.
people are like, "Yeah, I get the little girl possessed. Get her!"
Yep.
Ah,
I was possessed when I was a child.
yeah.
Possessed with awesome, and it
Mm.
never left.
Oh,
Mm.
that's cute. The awesome ghost.
Oh. Yeah.
I wonder what
Yeah.
I was possessed
Well,
with. Well, probably something inappropriate.
but I
Uh,
thought it, but didn't say it.
yeah.
So on that note, I guess we're about ready to call it a show. Call it an episode. Call it an evening,
Call it a
night.
night.
Yeah, call it a ghost. Nope, don't know what I'm saying. So Friday Night Friends, thanks so much for enduring this horny episode while we talked about the only movie to ever have a zero.
We didn't make a single horny joke that entire time.
Nope, I just did though. Well, you're
You
right
just
though.
did.
Yeah, because we weren't like ready to make jokes. We were ready to
Yeah.
make we go away,
The movie did not make me feel horny, I'll tell you that much.
which is actually funny because that's like you 98% of the time. So
That's
like
true.
this was 2%. This literally like made you less horny. Although let's circle back to that one review that was just like parsnips roast rock hard. Haven't been that way in a while.
Wait, is
There
that
was a
what it said?
weird,
I don't
yeah.
remember.
Do you not remember this?
Well, I just remember the parsnips piece. Okay, wait.
I'm surprised you didn't catch it.
Now we have to check ourselves. Oh, you're right. I was
Yeah,
so
right.
distracted by the parts. Okay, here's the review. Just this is my final word, and then I promise I'll shut up. Very disappointing. Roast. Were overcooked. Parsnip was rock hard. Haven't been for a while.
Right. Right. I caught that, and I just let it fly.
Maybe I was thinking about parsnips being roasted rock hard. I did not even, and there's no
Nope.
punctuation. It's all just one big run-in sentence.
Yep.
So
Was rock hard. Haven't been that way for a while.
I see
Go
why
watch
waste of
Horns.
money. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what you get to leave with, everybody. And enjoy the rest of your time this evening, this day, this morning, this afternoon. Thanks for joining us while we talked about horns. Next week we're gonna do The Exorcist. It's gonna be fun. If you haven't seen it since 1973, watch it again. Make sure if you're gonna watch it, try to at your best, right? Watch the longer extended version that's 11 minutes longer, and we're gonna talk about it next week. If you want to watch the full video of today's episode, head over to Spotify or YouTube if you're not there already, and take a watch. And until next time, go prepare for a 2-episode double feature, and we will see you there.
See you next time. So what do you think I was possessed with as a kid?
Gayness.
Yep.